and had a drink somewhere, you might know that bars and restaurants were allowed to reopen under the state's new order, but these nightclubs and places that are specified as a music venue are still closed. They are still not allowed to open their doors. So John gave us a really insightful look at that, explained some of the differences between a bar and a nightclub, and he's here to talk about it today. So thank you so much, John, for giving us a little bit of your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ivana.
So if y'all have any questions, of course, I will be watching it and I will let you know. I'll give John any of your questions, see what he can answer. If he can't answer it, we will do our best to get it for you. But let's just start out by clearing something up, John. I think a lot of us have questions about what is a bar and what is a nightclub.
Yeah, the question first arose in the revised health order that came out. It was been about 2 weeks ago now, and it allows taverns and bars to remain open as long as you are at a safe social distance from one another. So if you go into your friendly neighborhood tap of some sort, as long as the bar stools are 6 feet apart and tables are all arranged where they're at a 6-foot distance from different parties, then it is okay. There's also capacity restrictions. I think a lot of bars are a little weary of being above a 50% capacity. So that is also an issue. And bartenders themselves are supposed to, it's recommended that they be wearing personal protective equipment, face masks and or gloves, and so, or face coverings. So that's kind of where the taverns are at right now. They're allowed to stay open. The differential with nightclubs, and it was specifically mentioned as a kind of still a prohibited activity within that revised health order, is that a nightclub is a completely different type of business in which, yes, it does have a bar, but it also has a dance floor, and it's also a place where social distancing is very difficult. Also, nightclubs are different from taverns in that they keep different hours. A lot of taverns will shut down at an earlier hour than a nightclub, which will remain open until the early hours of a morning. That's kind of part of their business plan, always has been. So basically, that's the big difference. Where a nightclub, the adherence to social distancing is very difficult compared to a tavern, meaning that when people are dancing, there's a band or some sort of a DJ or some sort of entertainer on stage, that people are out on the dance floor, and obviously 6 feet social distancing goes out the window often, especially as the hours go on in the evening. But now the issue with nightclubs is that they're not prohibited from staying open. They certainly can, but they have to kind of reorganize their business structure. So in other words, a nightclub could essentially be temporarily a bar, where they can place the tables and the chairs out on the dance floor as long as they're at a safe distance from one another.
It's so interesting. I just want to interrupt you and say it's so interesting you say that, because I'm looking at some of our comments here, and somebody, right as you started saying that, actually Tom gave us something from the ABC board that kind of goes with what you're saying. If you want to put more tables out and put them on your dance floor, then you can operate as a bar. Something that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that can be a little bit of a easy way to differentiate these things in your head is a bar or a tavern, I think is the order called it. You can usually find a place to sit at those places and enjoy your drink. At somewhere that's considered a nightclub is a lot less seating, a lot more standing and dancing room.
Correct. Yeah. By our traditional definitions, a nightclub is somewhere where you stand, where you walk around. It's more social. It's more socializing, less structured. I mean, at a bar, you socialize. Your bar stools, before COVID-19, before the pandemic, we'd sit a lot closer. You sit at the bar and shoot the breeze with the stranger next to you while enjoying a beverage. But in this current environment, you can still sit at the bar. You're just going to be at a 6-foot distance. You're not going to be sitting right on top of one another. So that's the big difference. Yes, obviously a dance club is closer interaction with folks. Socializing is it's hard to stay at a greater distance. So yeah, it could be much more structured and organized at a tavern per se than at a dance club.
So
or a nightclub. Nightclub is the actual definition, but there is a nightclub is essentially a dance club or a music hall. They all kind of follow in line with one another.
It's funny because these are not terms that we typically use when we say we're going to our favorite bar. We don't typically say we're going to this nightclub or we're going to this music hall. So it's kind of interesting for all of us to now be throwing around these words that we haven't in probably years. If y'all have been with me a while, you know, typically I'm looking down at my phone to check y'all's comments. I got a new software, so I'm looking to the side of me. So if you see my eyes dart, I'm reading all your comments. But we have several different people, including Ken, asking about pool tables, different places with games, I don't know if cornhole is part of this, but different foosball tables. I think you mentioned in your story, pool tables, darts, places that have these type of games. Are these places allowed to open? And if they are these games allowed to be played right now?
Yeah. So right now, the comment we got as the week went on last week, first there was some digesting of what this order meant. The order came out a week ago on Friday. Nightclubs were specifically mentioned as a prohibited type of venue that could reopen under the current safer at home order. And as the week went on, the questions were raised to health officials is what exactly can occur in a bar? You know, I mean, we got pool tables, foosball, and stuff like that. And interestingly, there was a press conference or a press update, I believe it was on Tuesday in Mobile, or it could have been on Wednesday, in which the one of the officials with the health department provided an update in which she said that information she received from the state indicated that, in fact, that a lot of these games were not recommended to be allowed. For instance, foosball and darts and pool, because by their nature, it's difficult to maintain a safe social distance. However, I contacted an establishment in Birmingham that is known to have dart boards and foosball and all sorts of activities. And they'd indicated that, you know, they set up the dart tables. They moved the darts around where they're at a distance, so you could play you can play with your party in one particular game and be at a safe 6 to 10 foot distance from another party that might be playing. I guess their darts were not fixed structures that were on top of each other. So, you know, I guess, you know, they felt that they were in the right to do so. But, you know, the state health department and the health officials indicate that, you know, that these games are not recommended right now because it's very difficult to maintain safe social distancing. So, yes, these games are kind of frowned upon. Also, axe throwing is another one that's come up. There's a business that a company that provides this service specifically, this form of entertainment. There's a venue in Spanish Fort, and there's one in Huntsville. They're called Bad Axe Throwing, and they're currently cannot reopen under the current order because of concerns about being able to maintain safe social distancing and sanitation. People touching axes, you know, one person touching it and another one touching it, and how's that going to be monitored? So, and they've been providing regular updates in regards to how they're rolling out their business in other states like Georgia, for instance, or Oklahoma. So, yeah, right now in Alabama, these games are basically not welcomed under the current order. Now, will some of that change as we go on this month? It seems like some establishments claim that they can still continue on with these games and do them in a safe social distance environment. But again, you know, as the official with the Mobile County Health Department, it indicated during our news conferences that you could potentially be risking yourselves of facing a misdemeanor fine if enforcement were to come down by having these games occurring.
Right. Well, and I'm getting a lot of questions. I'm sorry, about movie theaters, bowling alleys, things like that. I know that your story focused more on nightclubs and nightlife, but do you have any answers about movie theaters, bowling alleys, other entertainment venues that are maybe not nighttime entertainment?
Right. Right now, they're off limits under the current safer at home order. They were specified. Movie theaters and bowling alleys both were singled out as being venues that are not allowed to reopen at this point in time. Now, will that change this month? I mean, there's some indication that perhaps we might see some loosening of those regulations. I know other states have allowed reopenings of certain kinds, but for instance, it could be very industry specific. Movie theaters are kind of facing a tough time right now. There's some these companies that operate movie theaters. The question is whether or not they can reopen, or what it will be like when they do reopen. Will it justify reopening? I know a lot of bowling alleys are eager to get reopened, but under safe social distancing restrictions. So it could be, it could be very specific as far as what's allowed to reopen eventually. But I do know right now that they are not allowed to in Alabama.
And I got a good question from Doug. When can venues offer live bands and dancing?
Good question. I think there's a lot of speculation that we might not see that until the month of June. The concern is the issue of congregations. When you have a music venue, the concern is you're going to have a large crowd. How do you keep the crowd safe and socially distanced from one another when you have a band on stage? And that's definitely a conundrum for a lot of music venue operators in this state. They're trying to figure out how exactly that's going to work. And so time will tell. I don't think Alabama is the only state that's struggling with that issue right now.
Right. And got a lot of people debating the things that are closed and the things that are open. And I understand the debate. We are just, like I said, reporting on what is open, what is not under the state's order. A couple other people, I know that you said you talked to an axe throwing company that operated in Mobile and Huntsville. We do have some in Birmingham. Just to address some of the comments, I think John made a comment of, we do have axe throwing in Birmingham, but it is just a different company than the one that John talked to. So I think that's why he didn't mention the Birmingham location specifically. Some other questions about the different things that law enforcement, or the different rules that some of these bars or nightclubs that are maybe turning into bars are facing. I know that you said there are fines, there are misdemeanor repercussions with this. Do you know of, or is any of the bar owners or nightclub owners that you've talked to, are they trying to make sure and trying to follow these rules to make sure that they do not have any issues with law enforcement? Or are they kind of like, look, we're just opening, we're doing our best, and we're going to hope for the best? I know we saw a lot of people before salons were allowed to reopen. We saw a lot of barbershop salons or stores opening, maybe against the different state health orders, but they opened, and a lot of them were shut down. What are you seeing with nightclubs? Are they following these rules, or are they just so eager to reopen that they can't contain themselves?
Well, no, they want to be safe for their employees, number one. They certainly don't want to put their employees in a peculiar situation. They also want their customers to feel safe as well. Otherwise, the customers won't come back. I mean, what a nightmare that would be from a public relations standpoint is if you had a nightclub that reopened, and the first time they had a band there, you had like a super spreader event, which, a whole bunch of people came up reporting having a COVID-19 outbreak. We've had some situations involving church choirs that have had that. And the argument right now is, well, if you have a congregation of people singing and dancing in that, they've compared it to these church choir super spreader events that occurred in early March. And health officials are saying, that could easily happen at a nightclub or a music venue of some sort. So there is the concern for the safety and health and well-being of their employees, and also, quite frankly, business relations as well. But yeah, they're, the bar business, they have liquor licenses. They certainly do not want to run afoul of law enforcement or the ABC board, which obviously they're sending out directives to their members as well. And, they certainly don't want to run afoul of the law. You always run the risk of having your liquor license suspended or, facing fines. And none of them specifically told me they were overly concerned about enforcement. And, I'm sure different jurisdictions will handle enforcement differently. But, these folks, they're in business and they want to run their businesses correctly.
Right. I did get, this is more of a comment than a question, but I think it's funny, so I have to share it with you. Alan said, when I play music at a bar, there's never a problem with social distancing. So Alan, maybe this is the perfect time for you and your business, Alan. I think, though, that a couple of people, including Alan, bring up a good point. There are no restrictions anymore in Alabama on the size of gatherings. As long as gatherings can maintain a 6-foot social distance, the governor has included in her order that these gatherings are not limited to a 10, 20, 30 person limit like we've seen earlier in this pandemic in the state. So Is there an argument for maybe putting on a show or any sort of band coming and just having people sit or stay at a safe distance away from the band and not allow anybody to enter a dance floor?
Well, I think that's what your music venues are looking at right now. For instance, I interviewed Veets Bar in Mobile. I interviewed the Soul Kitchen, and both of them are your classic definitions of music venues. They have a dance floor, and live music really runs the engine for their business. And if they're unable to have that, it's hard for them to justify staying open as just a place to come in and have a drink. So they're waiting for better clarity on how they're supposed to handle their operations going forward, especially the Soul Kitchen, which has a history of that's what they're for. I mean, there'll be lines of people wrapped around this Dauphin Street in downtown Mobile to go see a live performance there. So it's I think everybody's just kind of waiting for a little bit more information. I think the anticipation is that we're going to get some more information this month. This as we've seen coronavirus, this pandemic, this is one of the most fluid stories any journalist is going to cover in their lifetime, and things are changing constantly on it. And I would anticipate a little bit more guidance. I would be surprised if we did not know a little bit more of the fate of music venues and concert halls this year. We're coming into the summer concert season as well. We have some outdoor venues throughout this state, and people, we've seen musical acts cancel their summer tours this year. But what does that mean though for some of these music halls, these
Right.
amphitheaters and these large venues? They're a business as well. And,
Right.
and what are they? How are they supposed to make up for some of this lost business this year? So I think a lot of people on that side of the industry want to see what happens, and I think the pressure from the public too. I think the folks want to know when they can get back to be entertained, I guess.
Right.
It is though, when you talk to public health experts, they're concerned about congregations, and that's still something that you see all the time, whether or not the discussion is on cable TV news or online in a news article. I mean, the public health officials are worried about the potential of spreading this virus in a setting that's and typically they're more concerned about these indoor settings where ventilation is more difficult than an outdoor setting. So that could be also something that's explored when we talk about reopening music venues.
Right.
We've seen that with restaurants. People more comfortable, I guess, psychologically sitting outside and having their meal dining al fresco versus sitting inside,
Correct.
where the ventilation is not as is not as free.
I have two questions that I think we're going to wrap up with. One is that, if I can find it now, I scrolled too far. Another good comment from Tom. He said, "There's nothing contagious about music. It's the dance floor that's contagious and has to be closed." And you are right, Tom. I think that's a really good way to wrap up that conversation. Quick answer that we are going to give Justin. He asked, does anybody know what the fine is if you operate a live band with no dance floor? My understanding is that there is no fine. There is no rule against operating a live band. The dance floor is the problem. The social distancing is the problem. Is that right, John?
Yeah, the key is social distancing, but it's hard for me to understand how you could have a band and nobody at the venue unless you had the band and did a broadcast on you know what I mean, a live broadcast where people
something
can
like we're
watch
doing right now.
Yeah, they can watch at home. I mean, I guess that's one way of doing that. I don't know though, from a business perspective, I don't know how a local bar that has a dance venue is going to make any money. They're going to be spending money for the band to show up. Right. They're not getting any cover charge in return. That's a big thing, is the cover charge that they receive. So what is the cost and the benefit?
Yeah. I think here's also a good question, and you will know this about just living in Mobile and being in South Alabama. This is from Melinda. She is asking, and I'm assuming she's asking this especially ahead of Memorial Day weekend. She's asking, what about vacation activities at the beaches, mini golf, arcades, the track in Gulf Shores, etc.? I know that that's not nightclubs, but do you have anything you can share with some of our viewers who maybe are headed down to the beach for Memorial Day or later, maybe this week or next, about some of these activities, especially these kind of family activities that people typically flock to at the beaches?
Yeah, good point. I'm going to be looking into some of that, but some of these entertainment venues are not allowed to reopen yet. I know that, for instance, I know that they have a hybrid of amusement park and a dining shopping experience as well. And a lot of the dining has reopened and the shopping is reopened. So all that's reopened, but the actual amusement park itself, I'm not exactly sure where that stands right now. We're going to be looking into some of that this week on whether or not they might do soft reopenings at certain places. I know zoos are another question as well. But as far as I know right now, some of these places cannot reopen under the way that the classic way that we're used to them. Mm-hmm. So will that change some this week? These are all great questions. That it is Monday. Things I'm sure will be different by the end of the weekend because we do have Memorial Day coming up. What's the state's health order? Will it be revised again to address some of these venues, especially swimming pools? From some of the health experts I've talked to, the actual act of swimming is not a problem at all, or even sitting in a hot tub. The concern is being around a lot of people in a tight, confined area, that social distancing issue. And so that is the concern for a lot of folks right now. So I think some of these things should be addressed hopefully this week. And we'll be looking at doing a story as well, kind of explaining what to expect at the beach going forward. And again, the beaches are open. Folks can come down, they can stay at a condo or a hotel, and as long as they're abiding by safe social distancing parameters, they should be okay.
Right. Well, so it's fair to say, Melinda, keep your eyes out. We should have a story coming later this week about some of those activities, yes, and some of those facilities down at the beach, so we can keep you up to date if you're headed down for Memorial Day or anytime coming up soon. So I think that's all the time we have today. I will refer again to this lovely comment from Tom. There's nothing contagious about the music. It's the dance floor that has to be closed for now. So Tom, you wrapped that up wonderfully. John, thank you so much for your time. We will keep an eye out for your story on some of these beach activities and Gulf Shores area activities. We will put the link to your story about the nightclubs here in this comment thread at the top. So if you want to read John's story, learn more about the nightclubs and the taverns and what these owners are facing, please do that. And thank you again, John. And for everybody else, we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.